Hello and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. I normally preface this with about the title, but the title is renowned throughout the world. The word death, I think, needs not much explanation. Death. Okay, so yes, hello, welcome to an English podcast with Paul. I'm your host, Paul, and today we're discussing death. All right, this is unscripted, unedited, natural, native conversation. And in our case, today is death. And you'll see me looking down at my notes because I want to come across as professional and doing some homework. Not everything here is perfectly exact, and I suggest you use your common sense. And don't take my advice to court. I don't know why I say that. Anyway, I think because it's in a lot of videos. All right, okay. So, death. Death is different in many cultures, but obviously here in the UK, we don't see other cultures and how they deal with death. From what we understand in TVs and film and the news, death is celebrated in different ways, but we're not quite sure why or how. So culture really tends to play a big difference in how death is perceived. The other major issue is religion. Like, I don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses or the Catholics or Muslims. What else have I got? Roman. Okay. Romany travelers. That's what I mean for culture. Romany culture is very different. We're starting to see more and more in the idea of processions here in the UK for, like I said, Romany travelers, or maybe if you're very well known, or if you have one of these like motorcycle funerals where they say your last ride is in a motorcycle, and to do this they have a motorbike and sidecar, and the sidecar is a big, I don't know how you describe this, a big box with windows all around it. Big black box with a big window across the front and the top. And you can see the coffin inside and the flowers. And then that normally goes on the drive, very slow drive, from to the center, to the cemetery, or to the cremation. So they normally set off from the people's home, often from the people's house, because that's where people meet, often from the house. And then it goes on to the, like I said, the cemetery or the crematorium. So that's generally how there is a procession in the UK. Not always. A lot of the time people will just turn up at the crematorium in their car and just go straight there. So you might not ever see a procession for a long time. Okay, and then like I said, religion. So I'm not quite sure how death is portrayed in other religions, even in the UK. It's a really not a taboo subject, but definitely a subject that many people steer away from. They don't like the subject of death. And that's what we're going to get into today, the subject of death. Right, okay. What is death? Well, we all kind of know what death is. Death is the end of life for a living creature, thing, being, human, whatever. And we generally celebrate it or make a big issue out of it, or not such a big issue out of it. If, for example, you have very little friends or no friends and no family, you may just end up from the hospital straight to the crematorium in the back of a government or back of an ambulance, a government or private ambulance. So a private ambulance is just normally a blacked out funeral looking car or a blacked out funeral looking transit van that goes straight to the hospital or from the hospital to the crematorium. All right. So death, breaking it down into different parts. What I want to talk about, and I come back to time and time again, is mental health. So mental health is really impacted by our lack here in the West, our lack of confronting death, our lack of bringing it into the daily lives or the weekly and monthly lives of our citizens, of our people, of our society. It's really shunned away from because it's something we don't want to think about or talk about. It's a bit of a theme here with the West, how we bury our heads in the sand, so to speak, to avoid difficult situations, circumstances, conversation and topics. I could do a whole video just on problems we have because we don't discuss many of these so-called taboo subjects. So the reason I mention this is because a lot of people, probably everybody, at some point has anxiety, has worries, concerns, and sleepless nights. And this anxiety, it permeates our culture into many aspects. But they say the root of it is embedded with not knowing. And obviously death is a big thing in our culture that we don't talk about. We don't know about it. So anxiety is really, really prevalent, especially with the young people. So anxiety and also depression. Many people that are depressed are because they've not been able to communicate their worries, their anxieties, their issues, and they bottled it up, as we say, bottle it up. We often have a stoic attitude. And I think this is often projected and viewed from our role models. And often our role models are royalty, aristocracy, stiff upper lip, stiff upper lip. Such a good soldier, carrying on, well done, well done. That image of taboo subjects and avoiding confrontation has given us nothing but issues and troubles and problems. Trying to emulate that stoic attitude of, never mind, you carry on, well done, good show, old chap, well done, really has done a disservice. I think from a young age we are taught to look up to aristocracy and royalty. But if we don't talk about these issues, if we don't address them and see them for what they really are, and that is nature, you just cannot fight nature. It will always, always win. So anxiety then can spiral down into depression. Depression slowly opens up in many different ways and in many different aspects of one's life. It can really be a crippling issue if not addressed. And in the UK we don't address it. So we are aware that mental health is a big problem and everybody deals with it. But we seek professional help. We seek medical help. And our healthcare service just does not have the capacity in regards to recruiting of these professionals, the time it takes. Many people don't realize how long it takes to unpack your mental health problems and your trauma from decades, compounded again and again, because we bottle it up, because we have this ideology that you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't have these issues in front of other people, and it's private. That's what we've been told. So it's very, very difficult for those that do eventually want to help themselves by seeking medical help and intervention. Is normally far too late, and it takes a long time. You have to get referred from your doctor, so you have to see the doctor first, which can take a week, sometimes longer depending where you live, and then the doctor refer you, and that could take several months before you get to see a specialist. Then the specialist will just give you like a survey, like a checklist to find out how severe you are and how far up or down the waiting list you should be. There is the rare occasion that you are extremely suicidal and a danger to others, and you could check yourself in to a hospital or a mental health institute. So that is potentially one way to go. But most British people don't want to put extra hardship on our struggling health service. So many people will wait and wait and wait and wait until it's too late. Or they may end up taking their own lives. It's very difficult for people to get the help, the access to those services they need in a good time frame. It seems to be far, far too long. And like I said, the British tend to be quite stoic and reserved, especially the older generations. Right, so moving on. Often some of these depression and anxieties come from bad decisions in our life, or they perpetuate bad decisions. You may be depressed, you may have anxiety, and so you might start turning down offers of joining other people and making yourself happy. You can't always make a good decision if you're in a bad place mentally. It's really difficult to say, yes, I need to get out. And not everybody has got a friend at that moment to say, come on, you are going, let's go out and have fun and relax and enjoy ourselves and get through some of these tough times. Not everybody has that. Sometimes it's more a case of a midlife crisis where you kind of reflect upon your own life and feel you're not achieving what you should have achieved or what you want to achieve. And so you have some really bad, big decisions, maybe a divorce, maybe a new child, maybe a motorcycle, maybe a sports car, maybe a year in another country. These decisions are often quite spontaneous. And I am a very spontaneous person myself. So I've been told I've had a midlife crisis several times. which I enjoy. I enjoy the conversation. So, where were we? Midlife crisis, adventure seeking and adrenaline seeking, because we feel that that's what will help our life. That's what will help put our life back together and fix the problems we have. Okay. On a bit of a flip side to this, just being devil's advocate again, on the flip side to this, some other people are very content with their life, very happy to get up every day, walk the dog, come back, do what they've got to do, and then drive to work or commute to work, do that job for 8, 9, 10 hours, come back, do the evening routine again, take the dog out. And some people are just really, really content. And that is an amazing thing. I think being content in your life is the ultimate in happiness. I mean, they might not be 100% happy, but being content, I think a lot of people are searching for that. Being content. And often we see this in other cultures and other countries. And it often seems that those with the least amount to give, or the least amount in their life of money or possessions, seem to be the most content. And they're happy to share. And I discussed this with my wife the other day, that it seems that those that are finding the most financial difficulties are the most generous people we ever meet. Like I said before, we've traveled to parts of Asia and Europe, and we've come across some very, very gracious, humble, amazing people that are just willing and happy to share. It feels counterintuitive. It feels wrong. And then you start asking yourself, why am I not content? I have so much more than these people. I have lots and lots of things. Why am I not humble and have you humility for all the things I have in my life? And it's confusing. It's confusing that you have so much and yet you feel so empty. And that's going back to part of the mental health and having that void, that gap in your life, that, I don't know, very, very confusing. Right, okay. FOMO. Fear of missing out. So is a lot of this emptiness? Is a lot of it seems to be more prevalent in this day and age, whereas back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, people stayed in a job for decades. You might work down the mines or in the steel factories or other industries that have been around for a long time, and be in that industry your whole life and be grateful and happy and content. And that was like your family. Whereas these days, people jump from job to job to job, constantly looking for the right job, the family, the contentness of being in the ideal job. Now, is that because of this day and age? Is it because of social media, normal media? Is it because everybody seems to be having a great time but you? Is that what it is? Is it everybody's on Instagram with, look at this amazing picture of me with my feet out the back of a camper van, or in a hammock, or by a beautiful sunset in this foreign country with this landmark behind me? Look, I'm here. Look, I'm amazing. I'm here, this beautiful place, and you're not. Fear of missing out. Now, is that what's perpetuating other people feeling like they are not adequate? That they're not doing or getting what they feel they should? It goes on. It gets deeper. Another aspect of death would be when people say get your affairs in order, your last will and testament, the bucket list, all these things that you should be doing before you die. That's what people say. Get your affairs in order. I mean, that's an interesting concept. Get your affairs in order. So that means finish speaking to the people you have to speak to. Say what you have to say. And get your finances together. Get your finances together. Get your paperwork together. So somebody can easily find everything you want them to find after your death. Whether it's funeral plans, whether it's what you want done with the house, whether it's which heirlooms you would like passed on to which family members, insurance policies, all these things are considered getting your affairs in order. Last will and testimony. I want this heirloom to go to this relative, and I want a coffin made of pine, or I want a wicker coffin, or a cardboard coffin, something that's good for the environment coffin. Lots of different options. I want this music played at my funeral. I want this to be said at my eulogy. Lots of different desires and wants that most people really feel they have to follow to the T. It's very interesting that you can almost demand things happen after your death. And people actually put money and property into a trust where their loved ones can't sell or access part of this money or this house until they reach a certain age, or until the criteria has been met. And it is entrusted to the solicitors until such time it is deemed they're allowed it. Which is bizarre. All the power and control after you're dead. Very bizarre. All right. Bronnie Ware, an Australian writer, talked about the top 5 tips. Now this is a bit like I said in the previous video about when you die, and the nurse said that these things seem to be important to some people. Now this particular nurse, called Bronnie Ware, said, I'm not living and being who you wanted to be. Like if you're this black sheep of the family, but you're pretending to be something else or somebody else to please your family. Maybe they want you to be a doctor, but really you just want to be an artist dancing on stage. The second thing was working too hard. Too many hours, too many days at the office, too many weekends lost, not spending the time with your family. They say nobody's ever on their deathbed saying, I wish I stayed at the desk and the office for longer. Because generally you're doing it for somebody else. The third one, she says, I haven't got my glasses on now. Courage to express their feelings to avoid pain. Maybe there's somebody else in your family that's really upset you. Maybe you've really upset somebody else and you want to apologize. Maybe you want to, again, like we said earlier, what was the term we used? The term was getting your affairs in order. So that could be saying to a family member that you're sorry for something that happened a long time ago. All right, so that was the courage to express your feelings. All right, the fourth thing, staying in touch with friends. Now, I'm a great believer in trying to stay in touch with your friends. It's very difficult when you're traveling for your friends to invest in you. If you're going to be gone away for a year and you're friends with somebody, but they're going through tough times and you're in another country with your own problems, it's not impossible, but it can be hard, especially with time differences and weather affecting the communications, whether it's via mobile phone or Zoom or some kind of video link. Can be very difficult to maintain those friendships, not knowing where you are, what you're doing, and not being at the end of a phone or being able to come around and hug and touch and see one another and connect physically with a friend makes it hard for them not to want to invest in you further. So staying in touch with your friends can be difficult, but not impossible. And should be a priority, as well as family. And then the fifth thing was allow thyself to be happy. Allow thyself to be happy. Happiness. So letting go of the past, letting go of other issues and just moving forward and allowing yourself to be happy, which they say is a habit. making yourself grateful for your breath, for your life, being here on this planet is what they said is the fifth thing, allowing yourself to be happy. Which comes back to what I said just now about how some people are very content with their life. All right, so that was Bronnie Ware, this Australian writer. And I recently watched a BBC documentary about a man called Simon, and how, we do get onto this in a minute, so I'll bring it up now. We'll talk about it now. So this guy, Simon, was diagnosed with multi-neurons disease, where parts of your body, or the motoring parts of your body, slowly degrade and stop working. And generally to the point where you can stop walking, your hands and arms stop moving, and eventually your voice, and then finally your lungs stop breathing. So it is an awful disease. Well, most diseases are pretty bad, but yeah, this is also an awful disease. There is at the end the choice, especially in the UK. We are generally quite fortunate that we can choose to save the money or have the money to go to another country such as Switzerland and euthanize ourselves. So this is what Simon said in the BBC documentary. If I was a dog, you would take, when I got elderly and looked like I was in pain and stopped eating, you would take me to the vet and have me injected and put to sleep. So this man, Simon, you see the journey that he goes through and the roller coaster of him and his family and his friends, how they eventually get to Switzerland and they fill out the forms, they go for a visit, they see 2 doctors to make sure he is of sound mind and able to make a decision for himself, not being forced into anything, that he arranges it in advance, he pays for it in advance. He eventually goes there still to see another doctor 24 hours or 12 hours before the act. And then on that morning, they normally do it in the morning, gets given the poisonous medication, which is one of those things that puts you to sleep. Anesthetic, that's the word, anesthetic, that puts you to sleep. And so he has the drip, he finishes signing the forms, he says what he's got to say, whether he's pre-recorded it or was able to write it down. He has his final moments, and then they say, are you happy to carry on? Now you may open up this intravenous line and allow the medication to poison you. And so you go to sleep within 30 seconds, and then within 4 minutes, your heart stops and you're dead. From what I could gather, they then offer to cremate you there and then, because there's nothing to investigate. You get cremated, and your family, if with you, go home with an urn of your ashes to take back. And they had another ceremony in a church when the family got back, with the ashes up front, and a picture of the man Simon. And it was a very open, honest, interesting video film on the BBC about Simon. Very, very interesting. So like I said, an urn is often given to people, quite big, given to people with the ashes of their loved ones. Because in the UK, it seems a lot of loved ones like to keep the ashes in the house, maybe on the mantelpiece above the fire, so they can remember their loved ones. Often, maybe they'll have a tree planted, or a plaque on a bench, or just sprinkled out to sea, or sprinkled on their favorite place to walk. These are often things that are done in the UK. Otherwise, there is a burial where in a church or cemetery ground, the casket, the coffin will be buried and covered up, and a headstone which will be engraved with their name, date of birth, when they died, and sometimes a small message. saying loved husband or loved father, things like that. What else do we say? So one thing, also just prior to that, there is palliative care. Palliative care. So this is where that nurse was working that I mentioned earlier. Palliative care is just end of life care, another name. We like euphemisms in the UK, especially the more up the financial ladder you go towards aristocracy. Euphemisms are used a lot. So palliative care is another name for end of life care, maybe in a hospice, with which is a special type of hospital for people that are dying, basically. So palliative care is a really big industry to promote dignity and a calm, quiet place to end your life. Right, so we mentioned euthanasia in Switzerland. There's quite a lot of Facebook groups about it as well, because they passed a law in the UK, or rather they were looking at passing a law to allow euthanization in this country. Unfortunately, it got declined. Portugal apparently has, and Belgium has the ability to be euthanized yourself. That's another interesting part. Right then, so after that, moving forward, we have CRUSE, C-R-U-S-E, which is bereavement counselling. So counselling for those that have left behind and how to deal with it. So one of the things I said about not addressing this topic and how it's taboo, some people and some writers are trying to break down those barriers, trying to move through that taboo. And you can now buy books specifically for children, how to help deal with the death of a loved one, the death, and it's beautifully illustrated and a story to help a child understand death a bit easier. There's also books for adults. There's not many other YouTube or TV or other well-known ways of dealing with death, apart from CRUSE and therapy and counselling, which, as I mentioned before, is very difficult to get. Counselling is very expensive and it takes a long time if you're on a waiting list, especially from your doctor. So again, it's a very sad area, which often leads to depression from others. It's a very difficult, big trauma that we find in the UK, a very big trauma in the West that's difficult to get through and get over. Okay. One way people get through it and get over it, or helps them to deal with it, is thinking about the legacy of that individual. So they may enter a charity race, like Race for Life, which is a really big famous charity in the UK, specifically for women that have suffered from cancer. So there's Race for Life. There's something I did. I give blood for when somebody passed away in my family. And there's something I want to get back into doing more often. So giving blood is an important thing for our health service and to help other people. I'm also an organ donor. Should I die, that's part of my wishes, to pass on my organs to somebody that's struggling to live themselves. So legacy sometimes helps with closure and moving forward. It helps if you're able to get therapy, whether you're able to get counselling, and whether you're able to have a role model or somebody you can really talk to. Really makes a big difference of how you're able to get through those dark times and still see a light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and try to enjoy life and keep hold of it and move forward whilst you have that little time left. Okay, what forgot? So death is the most important truth in life because it makes everything inconsequential. every argument, every car crash, bump, assuming they're minor, it just makes all those things just go away. Where I imagine when you're on your deathbed, you don't care what happened 20 years ago with this person or that person or this work or that work, or it's all inconsequential. And yet on the other hand, all those beautiful quality moments spent with somebody you care about, smelling the flowers, smelling the coffee, watching a sunset, those beautiful moments, those are what make life really worth living. Those just attention to detail and being with somebody you love, or being with yourself and just being alive in that moment to watch the moon and look at the stars. It's just about those moments. So the small things become very, very, very important. All right, we need to wrap up. We're running out of time here. So the last thing I've really got is how to die. And they may seem a very odd thing to say, how to die. Well, animals, for example, dogs and cats that I've observed over time, often go off by themselves and find themselves somewhere warm or cozy or soft to lay down, and they literally just give up. They stop eating and they stop breathing, and they choose to die on their own. Now, from a Stoic's point of view, that would be very interesting and very logical. But as we get older, for many people, the anxiety and the fear of death makes us want to be around people we love and people we care, and hold people's hands. Because for a lot of people, death is very, very scary and upsetting. So how to die? Well, from Dr. Irvine Yalom and his book Staring at the Sun, I believe the best way to die is with dignity, is with being a role model for those around you. Not think about yourself and that you're dying, but think about the people around you, how you are affecting the people around you and their feelings. If you're able to alleviate some of their worries, their concerns, and you can make it a happy, jovial, positive experience, then that will help be less of a trauma in their lives after you're gone. If you can show them that dying with dignity is nothing to fear, whether there's children in the room or young adults in the room, that, or even anybody in the room, that dying with dignity and happiness and contentness is a real positive, happy message and legacy you can leave to other people. Now, I was also last going to say that if you can choose your time to die, then Dignitas in Switzerland would definitely be a way I would look at should I be inflicted with a disease. Otherwise, I would really like to be happy and positive and confident when I die. And in part, I believe that's because I feel I've lived my life and I've done lots of amazing, great things, moved on through so many different things. I've had motorbikes, cars, car crashes. I've had wives, mortgages, businesses. I've done lots and lots of different jobs. I've met thousands of people. I've met lots of people. I've spoke openly. I've spoke, is that the right word? Spoke? I've given speech. I've done lots and lots and lots of interesting things. And I'm really happy and really proud of the life I've lived so far, thus far. And so, despite feeling the sadness of death from when my family members die and have recently died, it must make me appreciate life and flowers and sunsets and stars. It must make me happy to have this time, to leave a legacy of happiness and hope for the people around me. And so I say goodbye and thank you for listening. And remember, keep enjoying English, have fun, play games, and enjoy those little small details of life, those small moments. But most of all, have fun. Okay, thank you very much. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.